What if anxiety isn't the problem, but it's your magic trying to get your attention? In this episode, we're unpacking the spiritual roots of anxiety, how it got mislabeled for decades, and why your nervous system might just be psychic. It's time to stop coping, and maybe it's time to start casting. Welcome to Curse Breakers, where we leverage astrology to empower you. I'm Jacki Smith, and I'm here with my co-host and chief astrologer, Storm Cestavani. And this show is sponsored by Coventry Creations, where they have magical solutions to your everyday issues. We let the stars lead you. Hey, Storm.
Hey, what's up?
Just so many things. So many things, which we're not going to get into, except for the fact that there's so many things going on for the past 18 months that my nervous system and my anxiety are on override. I'm like, I don't know about you. Well, I know you deal with this and we've been talking about this, but never in my life have I had to deal with so much anxiety.
It's different. And I find often when you're dealing with somebody that has a diagnosable form of anxiety, like I have a diagnosable form, I have both general anxiety disorder and social phobic disorder. And I think that a lot of times, Jacki, that people that have never gone through the particular experience of anxiety have a difficult time relating to what that is until they go through it themselves.
AKA me right now.
And then it's like everything becomes this full picture as to how something can begin to evolve and begin to take over an individual's life. Thankfully, and I'm very, very blessed that I pretty much have both of those particular disorders contained. And it allows me to be a voice or offer some form of hope and guidance to people that may still be going through issues or starting to go through issues in regards to anxiety, because I did not deal with it in a standard everyday sort of way.
I know you didn't. I mean, we've talked about this over the years. Because we've been friends for
16 years. 16 years. No,
16.
longer than that. 20 years. 20 years.
I was going to say it's been 20. That's why I said, because, who wants to? Well, I mean, I love that we have been friends this long.
Yeah.
And we have seen each other through a lot of things. And so I just want to talk about this
your kid was a kid.
Yeah. I want to
like
talk
in
about,
elementary school.
Mm-hmm. So I have been in a unique position in my career, which is I have created these interesting friendships with people around the country, and I've never met them, right? Because I sell products to them, and I sell emotional products to them, and we have deep conversations about things, so that when you and I met over the phone or over the podcasting world, and we would have these deep conversations, it never once bothered me that you hadn't seen a picture of me. I hadn't seen a picture of you. We never met. I never thought about meeting you.
Uh-huh.
It was not a worry of mine because that's my norm.
Right.
And so, when there was the kerfluffle of things, I'm like, whatever. I mean, this is my norm. I don't care. So we've been able to, my point is who are you when we're interacting? It's always been my point. How are you showing up for me?
It's also, if you think about it, Jacki, and this is one point to make, and this was even from metaphysically minded people. If you think about, when I did have my emotional breakdown in 2011, that the standard way that people wanted me to deal with it was in the clinical model sort of way. Get it over, get it done with, be resolved with this in 10 weeks.
Right. Yeah.
And you had a lot of help in regards to the magical aspects in regards to it, which was more take its time. And even your sister Patty, I worked with in regards to my disorders. It was more about taking its time and letting this happen and evolve naturally, so that it was something that was authentic and something that I was comfortable with. And I wasn't forcing things because ye old person on the other side of the internet that I need to impress says so. And it worked out well as a result of my doing my own thing.
Right. Because I said, okay, what is the energy of this guy? I mean, how has he shown up for me? How has he shown up in my life, in our interactions? What's that about? And how have you helped me in my life? And how have I helped you in your life? And I was like, you know what? We're just going to keep rolling. Really what it came down to is, and this really ties into our subject of anxiety, which is you have always been there on the other side of the phone, on the other side of the internet, to help me unpack what's going on for me. And my anxiety, because what's interesting in the past 18 months, and I say, like, I'm like, I've never had this kind of anxiety, but what's truer than not, is I actually have had this anxiety. I'm just not stuffing it anymore. The basket's full.
Mhm.
I can't stuff it down anymore. And I've become healthier, and through other things that I've done, magical things, just personal evolution, therapy, etc., and then the work that we've done together, it's not possible for me to stuff it anymore. Deal with it. I got to sit in the suck and deal with it. And so now it's just like, oh, I have always had anxiety. We talk about what things were like, say, 20 years ago or 30 years ago, which is more to the point.
40.
40. Yeah, when we were
40.
younger. How was anxiety viewed then versus how it's viewed now? And what's that difference? And why does it feel like, everybody and their brother is talking about their different anxiety disorders and their neurodivergence and their neurotypical and all this other stuff? And why does it feel like everybody's got a problem?
I think that a lot of the issue is that it wasn't until now, this is a long time ago at this particular point, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Until 1980, Jacki, the medical model for anxiety was not even addressed. It was just, considered, something that people were going through, or, some form of, malady is probably the best word. They didn't even have names for them yet. Okay. And it wasn't until 1980, which in the third edition of the Diagnostic Statistic Manual of Psychology, that they actually gave names to anxiety. And of course, now in the DSM-5, okay, that was the DSM-3. The DSM-5, it is a much more fleshed out area of psychology than was there before. Okay. And the problem is that even in the 1980s, even though that they now had labels for them, a lot of them were being misdiagnosed. For example, if a woman, decided, one day she was upset at her husband, okay, because she was sick of mopping the floor and him trapping in dirt all the time. And she just said, you know what, stop this shit, and went raving mad. Okay. That was considered, oh my God, she's hysterical. She's out of her mind. And in a lot of ways, a lot of psychological disorders were targeted towards women. Men didn't seem to have them back then.
Because men had to just man up.
Well, not only was it man up, it was a sense of weakness. But here is the thing, Jacki. In 2025, I don't think that we've evolved that much on these issues. I don't think that psychologically, even though that we have more sophisticated names for it, I don't think that we've really evolved. Mental health, I've been saying this. You and I did an episode of Keep It Magic. I know exactly which episode it was. It was episode 13. Okay, of the first season. And at that particular point, I stated that we need mental health reform in the United States. Okay, extreme mental health reform to fix the particular stigmas that are associated with anxiety and any form of psychological disorder that people may have. We recorded that episode in 2011.
Yeah.
It's now 2025. And still, the particular answer to anxiety is, and a lot of this has to do with, most people don't have the funds to go to a depth psychologist, which would be like a Jungian analyst, and spend 5 years at $300 a week. Okay. They don't have the funds to be able to do that. So they have to rely upon their insurance. Okay. Which thankfully, we have insurance.
We do, but so many people do not.
Yeah. And they get 10 sessions, Jacki, covered by their insurance company, and usually an SSRI like Lexapro or Celexa or Effexor, or, there's so many. I mean, if I listed them all out, we'd go to sleep. Sometimes you would get a benzodiazepine like Xanax or Klonopin, and you were often on your way. The problem, and during those 10 sessions of therapy, which was usually either cognitive behavioral therapy or dialectical behavioral therapy, you learn the particular triggers. And I remember, Jacki, at that point that when I went into therapy, my therapist at the time handed me a book. And here is the irony. The book is called Feeling Good. Now, one of the interesting things that I'm going to tell you, which is going to kind of shock you, is that Carl Jung, his ultimate goal of psychological health isn't feeling good. It's becoming whole. And I think that that whole process of resolving the underlying issue, getting to what type of symbols or archetypes are alive within the individual, is pushed under the rug. And basically what the individual is left with after those 10 sessions of therapy is psychotropic medications and still feeling bad, and then feeling the shame that goes along with that. Why am I still feeling this way? I should be resolved. I should be beyond this. And it's because there is no internal work. And it's just my feeling. If you don't do the internal work, you're not going to heal from it.
Percent. I'm in total agreement. Total agreement. You know, I've been doing talk therapy for a while, which I've loved. I've absolutely loved. And one of the things that's, I think, is missing from some of
the... That's closer to depth psychology, by the way, talk therapy.
But I also think what's missing from that is like your assignments of doing the inner work. You can talk about the inner work. I mean, you kind of talk about it, but there's like no assignments. There's just, you're just talking about it. And sometimes there is like things to think about or things to do a little bit differently. But I mean, I think to me, now I might be different because I do the inner spiritual work. I do healing work. You know, I don't leave that stuff alone. So when I talk to my therapist about these things, she's like, oh, well, that's fascinating. But that's not what typical people do.
My therapist, Jacki, the one advantage that I had with my particular therapist was, on day one, I told her I did not want to approach this through a full behavioral therapy model. I also wanted to use a Jungian model. She had no knowledge about Jung. Luckily, I did. Okay. But what she did is that she gave me the space to do my own thing, including, Jacki, that there was a point where I had a block, and I told her, I said, I want to do something next week with you. It's going to be very, very weird for you. Okay. But I would like to do it. Now, I did choose a particular deck, which I felt responded to her a little bit better. I used an Osho Zen tarot deck, but I brought tarot cards and shuffled them and laid them out on her desk, and we talked about them in a therapeutic sort of way. So she was open to all of these things and letting me process things in this way. I thank the universe for Cindy, okay, because she gave me the space to be able to do it. But most therapists like yours just saying, oh, that's an interesting way of looking at it and viewing it, because most of them do not have the clue. They have the CBT book and the DBT book, and that's their thing. And most of them are social workers, not psychologists.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. And that is true. That is true. So what's interesting with anxiety today and how it's being dealt with psychologically, I think is another thing, which is we're doing a lot of self-diagnosis and then taking it to our doctors or taking it to our therapists and psychologists. And then they're like taking our lead. What do you think about that?
Conflicted about it. I'm at a particular point, Jacki, in which I have been looking at things like the broader scope, and it may just be my age and that I'm at a point in which I'm more reflective than I was years ago. But I'm looking at things even in a broader context of like the internet. Is it a blessing or is it a curse? I'm looking at things in regards to the fact that I can go to Copilot or ChatGPT or Meta or Grok or everywhere has an AI program and begin to ask it questions and get out a particular spit out response, which eerily enough can be highly accurate, and then bring that into a doctor. I will state that, I was dealing with some health issues right after I had COVID, and I looked up some stuff, Jacki, and I did bring it to my doctor and said, do you think that this could be the possible problem? And he looked into it. So I think that we can use these things as a tool. I don't think we should self-diagnose.
Right. I know when I brought some of the stuff to my therapist going, do you think maybe I have ADD or maybe I'm depressed because of blah, 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 blah. And she asked me some really poignant questions. And she said, and we had lots of discussions in our session. She goes, at the end of it, she goes, if you can do this, this, and this, you are not chronically depressed. You may have acute moments of depression and you're not ADD if you can accomplish all of these different things that you do. And I'm like, okay. I mean, because I just, it's been a rough couple of years. Well,
right.
God, it's been a rough, honestly, like 7-8 years. But has it ever not? Then I start thinking, has it ever not been rough?
Girl, we've been going through problems since I've known you, and that's 20 years.
I know. So I'm like, has it ever not been rough? I mean, so there was like there's like a year of like, hey, this is great. Look at what I'm doing. Woohoo. And then the tables turned because in the tarot speak, that wheel of fortune is always turning.
Right.
That wheel of fortune is always turning. And I think that what as I talk to folks in younger generations or just younger folks in general, I'm like, don't forget that wheel of fortune is always turning. You're going to sit in the suck for a while and then it's going to turn. You just got to wait for it. You got to watch for it to turn, not wait for it to turn, but watch for it to start turning and then jump on that ride.
I think that one of the main things, Jacki, in regards to where I have a problem with the traditional therapeutic model is traditional therapy as addressed through the DSM. Okay. And let me say, thank the heavens we have a DSM. Okay. But it views things like anxiety as a problem to be solved or eliminated. It needs to go away. You have to get rid of it. Okay.
Interesting.
Whereas the teleological or the spiritual, or you have to think, although that the DSM did not address anxiety specifically until 1980, Jung addressed it in the 50s. Okay. And basically it was meant as a message to be interpreted and a necessary part of growth and transformation. So anxiety in the teleological or spiritual way is a necessary part of growth or transformation, meaning you cannot grow or transform without it.
I love this. Wait, I want to pause and I want you to restate that slowly for the people in the back.
The traditional diagnostic method of dealing with anxiety is that it is a problem that needs to be solved or eliminated. In the teleological or depth psychological or the spiritual, or even I would state, if I want to be so bold, the magical, anxiety is a message to be interpreted and a necessary part of growth or transformation, meaning you cannot grow and transform without it.
Of course. So as you're saying this, I'm seeing this and I'm going, of course, because I've been using my anxiety magically. And we'll get into that in a little bit, because that's something that in the middle of different anxiety attacks, I've been sitting with it and going, all right, what do I do with this? Because to me, everything has a purpose. And that's something that I have worked with my entire magical career. So I'm like, okay, what am I do with this anxiety? So, and one of the things that I've realized is that I cannot get through to the next layer to grow without it being highly uncomfortable. And one of my meditations that I was sitting with, and I say meditations loosely, one of the times I was sitting there freaking out, AKA meditating, I had a vision of the chrysalis, right? The gooey moment where the time frame where that caterpillar is becoming the butterfly. And you think that caterpillar didn't have a whole bunch of anxiety? I mean, it didn't really, because it doesn't have the emotions. Right. But wouldn't that be very anxiety ridden while you're becoming goo?
Right.
And then when you're like building new whatevers to become the butterfly, the new structure, the new skeletal structure, the new circulatory structure. I mean, wouldn't that be just an anxiety-ridden experience? And then when you have to break out because you're now feeling claustrophobic. So I just had that vision of when I was working with my anxiety saying, well, what is the message here? And it reminds me of something I read quite a while ago. And I wish I remembered where I got this. I gotta lean over and look at it. I put this on my wall and I keep reading it like almost every day. And it says, stress arises because something incredibly important to us is at stake. Every decision feels monumental, laden with the weight of our dreams and aspirations. And so when I start that freak out, I lean over and I look at that and I'm like, okay, this is important. Something's coming up. These decisions feel really weighty because they're about my dreams and aspirations. So it's okay. I'm doing something important.
I can turn that into a psychological statement, Jacki, that particular quote, which is anxiety is a signal from the unconscious that something within the psyche seeks integration or conscious recognition. Now, as a depth psychologist, okay, what I would do in regards to, say, for example, you were to come to me for therapy, Jacki.
Well, that's our conversations.
Okay. That's our conversations. Okay. You've come to me and you're talking about, this whole caterpillar thing. Okay. what I would give you probably as an assignment, okay, because I like giving people busy work. I learned that from my fourth grade math teacher. So I just have gone with it. Give them busy work. Is I would tell you to spend some time and maybe use something like ChatGPT or, any other AI program and just type into it, could you give me a list of myths that have to do with transformation? Specifically, I am imagining a butterfly or a caterpillar turning into a butterfly. Hit enter and get a list of the myths. Now, here is the thing. One is going to stand out to you, and I will tell you why. When I was doing my work, okay, the myth that stood out to me, and it still stands out to me, and it's one that I work with regularly, Jackie, is the myth of Perseus and Medusa.
You do work with that a lot. I love that one.
I work with it a lot. And the reason being is that the particular type of disorder I have has to do with freezing somebody into place. They're now frozen to stone. They can't move. They can't make movement. Okay. And basically what it has to do with, the Medusa is an archetype of paralyzing fear. Okay. And basically how I worked with it, Jackie, is that it wasn't looking at the Medusa straight on. It was looking at her myth and looking at the story involved with it in a creative way, but starting to look at it sideways. Because I'm not gazing right at her. I'm now looking at it sideways. I'm now reflecting inwardly. I have a statement when I talk about Perseus and Medusa about, and you even know, Jackie, that I have a crystal that is the Medusa. That when I'm working with it, Jackie, I think to myself, okay, Perseus used a mirrored shield. When you go look in a mirror, what do you see? You. Okay. So what is going on in that particular way? And when you're working with looking at anxiety sideways, you can journal it, dream it, draw it. And by working at it with psychological distance, you're no longer consumed by it. But I would recommend that working with myths that have to do with transformation. And there's many.
Yeah, I can totally see that. I can see, you love working with myths. So, and what's interesting.
You always tell me that you'll read an article of mine and say, this myth stuff is your superpower.
It totally is. And then I can also see modern myths, which is what we watch on TV, the Marvel comics.
Right.
The Marvel universe, or even supernatural kind of thing. And they're all taken from ancient myths.
Just only deal with one Loki at a time. Multiples is just crazy.
Just crazy. But I can see diving into that and saying, where do I fit in that? Because that's all the Jungian archetypes too, right? I mean, in the end, we have a play going on in our subconscious, and we're that character in that play. So if we can
myths, Jackie, are in any form of a story, whether it be Lord of the Rings or General Hospital. Okay. Myths are alive and well in all of them because they're stories. And, there is not much difference between Psyche and Eros and Luke and Laura.
Oh my God, you're dating us. You are dating us so far back. So far back.
There's not much difference.
And the people who know who Luke and Laura are, you need to up your life insurance. So, going back to this, is one of the things that I talk about a lot is what's the story playing in your head? There is a story going on in your subconscious that you're a character in, and then you continue to cast the characters with people in your life.
Right.
To continue to recreate that story, which is going back to that myth. So in your anxiety, you will continue to play that out over and over again if you don't take it and say, what is the myth or the story that's continuing to play out? And there's ways that you can move through this if you can slow down and tap into your subconscious or unconscious. And there's different ways to do that. But one of the things I was thinking about when we were getting ready for the show last night, I was sitting there and I actually had some quiet time where...
Yikes.
Yeah, right? But it was purposeful. I turned off all, well, except for the typewriter, the laptop I was typing on, but it was very focused on a thing. But I didn't have any TV on. I didn't have any music on. I didn't have multiple technology streams going into my head. And I slowed down and I started thinking about what I used to do when I was younger, before I had a cell phone to be in constant touch with people, before I had Google, before I could do the internet and social media and take my moments of anxiety and reach out and make sure I could touch someone or be part of something. when I had to sit in my own soul.
Mhm.
And like, what did I used to do? So when I had to slow down my life and let my soul catch up, and I think that becomes, so when I did,
Well, we know what I did. I was reading Homer.
yeah, well, yeah. Well, you were, and then you were learning the stories, but I
Right.
did things like listening to a full album, whether it was, I didn't have vinyl, but I would have a cassette or a CD.
And you listened from the beginning to the end and you read the liner notes. But that was an experience with music that I
And
think is completely lost now.
yeah. And then I would go to a bookstore by myself and I would explore. And that was, there was pre-Borders days, if you knew what Borders was, or pre-Barnes and Nobles days, pre-giant bookstore days. And it would be a smaller bookstore. And so it was really an exploration of that, a lot of indie bookstores, an exploration of that owner and what's that owner's interest and specialty and learning about that. I also would go to a coffee shop and journal, write poetry, take my tarot deck and pull a card and dive into that, or learn about, connect with an herb. Like I had one, maybe two books on herbs, and because there wasn't a plethora like there is today. And I would I would sit at home and I would pull out that chamomile and put it in my hand and go, "Hey, chamomile, what are you about?" And because there was space to do that, and there was space to listen to your own head and listen to the subconscious and listen to, and sometimes that's great and sometimes that's dangerous. I mean, but that there is a slowness that is missing today. And I don't want to sound like an old person that goes, back in my day, we didn't have to rush around.
You're allowed to do that now, Jacki.
I know I'm post 55. I mean, it was something.
It's called Saturn, the golden years, Back when I was a kid, that's what you're doing. You're going back to the golden years.
Yeah.
Which is a myth.
Yeah, right. The golden years are a myth. But giving my subconscious and my intuition space to talk to me. And that's my lesson right now. And maybe that's because of that post Saturn return is going, you know what? I need that space for my intuition.
You haven't had your Saturn return again yet.
I haven't?
No. You will not have your Saturn return again until it starts in May.
Wait, it didn't happen. I thought it.
No, you're going to be starting to go through it when Saturn moves into Aries. Saturn is in Aries in your chart.
FMO.
So now I'm going to do some therapy on Jacki. We'll be back in a minute.
So this is, I love and hate astrology. Anyway.
And love and hate having an astrologer, right?
Right. And just so you know, this whole therapy thing is not one-sided. I know it's not, because there was plenty of years when it was two-sided.
Right.
It's just my turn.
Yeah.
So just kind of going back to that.
I'll have my Saturn return again for a few years. It's not until Saturn moves into Taurus.
Then it'll be your turn. Anyway, I think that's good news, though. Now that I'm thinking about my Saturn return and my Saturn moving into Aries and what my life was like then, I think that's good news.
Well, the way that you can work with that actively, Jacki, is to sit down and write what was going on in your life 29 years ago. And even though that the cast of characters may be different and the landscape may look a little bit different, this season of Grey's Anatomy is going to look like a previous season of Grey's Anatomy. It's going to be the same themes that are going to be brought up. It's just going to be dressed in a different outfit. So that's the way that you can do it, is really take a look at, what was going on, in 1996.
Yeah, my daughter was born.
Yeah.
Well, it was about to be born. So, yes, good stuff. It was a lot of interesting, good changes in my life.
Right.
Cleared a lot of stuff up.
And look at the anxieties and the difficulties that you were going through at that particular point, not only personally becoming a new mother and the anxiety of that, but also business-wise and relationship-wise.
Mm-hmm.
Compared to 29 years later, in which relationships have taken on a new dimension. Luckily enough, you're still with the same person.
Yoo-hoo.
But that relationship is going to take on a different layer and a different level. And your Saturn is in your 7th house. So starting to deal with issues and restrictions in regards to partnership. Okay. And all of the things that brings out is going to be triggered. Also, Saturn is in opposition to most of your stuff in Virgo. Okay. So it's going to be forcing you to become more conscious of who you are as an individual. So there's your therapy session. Everybody got it.
Thanks. Everybody heard it.
Yeah.
And you're welcome. So, but going back to that whole, slowing down, and then I think that's part of that. So you can hear what the anxiety is about, because that, I think, is the lie of anxiety, that you have to get rid of it. Like going back to what
Right.
you said, that you have to get rid of it,
Right.
versus understanding that it's a message for you. It's usable.
Yes. What is this trying to teach me? Which is why I tell people to work with it creatively, because oftentimes you can't look straight forward at it, Jackie, and attack it like, you're Hercules. Okay. You have to look at it from the side. You have to look at it in a different capacity. And it's where I think one of the questions that I was going to ask you, actually, Jackie, is, do you think that people that are more magically aware or more spiritually aware, or even, for example, if you listen to a Christian, they're always being attacked by the devil in one way or another. They're under attack constantly. Do you think if somebody takes on a spiritual path, let me put it that way, do you think that it may these things? And is the anxiety actually serving some form of other purpose, whether it be spiritual or intuitive or just growth oriented?
Yeah, I think it depends on it is so unique to the person, that when somebody is stepping into their spiritual path, it also depends on where they are in their hierarchy of needs, to be honest with you.
Right.
So is their anxiety based in, my God, I don't have enough food to eat. I'm hungry, or I'm lonely, or am I actually spiritually evolving? Because I think we step into a spiritual path for, in essence, a goal to become closer to divinity, to become an evolved human. Like you said, what did Jung say? It's not to become happy, it's to become whole. And I think that's why we step into a spiritual path, is to become whole, because we feel fractured, and anxiety can help us feel fractured. And if that's all we know, and we find ways to mask that, or medicate that, then that's enough for us. And then stepping in, and people who step into a spiritual path, it depends on where they are. Because there's plenty of people that I know that have stepped into a spiritual path that stay in that fractured state, and they stay in those, I don't want to say lower, but in the hierarchy of needs, they stay in that physiological need or the protection need. They're always in a state of crisis, being attacked.
Currently, we're going through a lot of stuff astrologically. As we're recording this, we're in eclipse season. We had a lunar eclipse a week and a half ago. We're going to have a solar eclipse this coming weekend. Venus is retrograde. Mercury is retrograde. The sun has now moved into Aries. A lot of planets, Venus and Mercury, are going to move back into Pisces. And one of the things that I'm seeing, and it's one of the things that I'm questioning, because I did go through a little bit, not for long, I can stop it at this particular point, but this weekend, Jackie, I started to go through a little bit of anxiety, and I stopped myself and said, why am I feeling anxious about this? And it had a lot to do with a lot of people being at odds with one another, and a lot of people feeding each other's stories in certain sorts of ways and amplifying them and being antagonistic. And then I just finally said, you know what? I'm not participating in that energy.
Mm-hmm.
There is a time in which you have to cut it off. And it led to the moment that I decided I'm not going to participate in this, the answers and the solutions started to come through, Jackie, and I was able to bridge some things to calm some things down. But it's still, triggering. And I think that, this is all that I'm just going to be blunt and direct, because you know that's my way. Get the hell off of Facebook.
Right. Yeah.
Stay off of Twitter. You do not need to be on Instagram and TikTok all day. Go live your life. Don't live your life online. Stop
Really.
it.
And in a similar vein, so wait, before I go into the similar vein, you had a question at the beginning of that.
Well, my question was about, do you think that you answered it, which you did feel that people that were spiritually attuned or spiritually aware do have a heightened sense of being more sensitive to anxiety?
Yeah. Well, okay. Also, so there's spiritually aware, and then there's psychically aware. Those are two different things. I think psychically aware is when your psychic senses are opened up, which might be whatever your clair is, clairvoyant, clairsentient, clairaudient, etc. And so if your clair is open,
and you may be a triple offender,
but if your psychic senses are open, then that can create a lot of anxiety. If they're like just riding roughshod on you, like,
Right.
woohoo, this is the Wild West of going everywhere with your psychic senses open, which I've done that when I first learned to really open up my psychic senses as a young adult. I was like, what's going on? And I really had a hard time understanding where I ended and other people began, especially in the empathic thing. And then I learned
I'll get to that in a second.
yeah. And then I learned to shut that shit down.
The issue, and this is when I was working with Patty, who is Jacki's sister, by the way, part of Coventry also, but I worked with her, and one of the things that came up, which I had not even really considered Jacki up to that point. I had enough problems to deal with, being clairvoyant, clairaudient, clairsentient. But when she said, Storm, the feeling and the issue here is that you're actually also an empath. And then I had to go, me, I then have to read 14 books and really analyze what the heck this is from a psychological perspective. A lot of people that are empaths, Jacki, are just constantly exposed and open to the collective. So what is pouring through them is no longer them. It's now just the collective. And and all of the particular energies at the moment in collective, much of which are very disturbing, that's all you have to do is look at the news, starts to filter through the individual. And then we attempt to personalize it. And it's that personalization that I think causes the anxiety and causes people problems.
Yeah. Yes. Because the empathic abilities also, I think, opens up intuition. So when you're spiritually growing, I think you naturally open up your empathy because you're naturally opening up compassion. You're connecting with divine, that naturally opens up. And then intuition opens up. And then if you start getting these intuitive and empathic hits and you don't have the framework to interpret it, there's a disturbance in the force and I don't know what to do with this. And there's a restlessness that happens, which then can cause anxiety. I mean, I remember, actually, this happened to me last night, to be honest with you. There's something that I needed to do that I couldn't do. And I felt that there was something wrong. And there was something wrong and I couldn't do anything about it. And I couldn't help the person that it was wrong with. And I just was like, I was vibrating with this and it's someone I dearly love. And so I just I was like, oh, that's what it is. That's what's going on. They're going through a process that I cannot change for them. I cannot help them with. I cannot hold their hand or make it easier. So I just had to let it go.
Surrender.
I had to surrender it. I had to surrender it to the divine and say, as much as I want to help this person, I can't, and I can't take this on.
Right, exactly.
And which felt discompassionate. Is that a word?
It can be now.
It is now. It felt almost cruel to say, I can't help you with this. And, but it was self-care, which is another thing that triggers me when people talk about self-care, because I don't think it doesn't mean what people think it means. But so that can be really weird. It was creating anxiety for me, like I was doing something wrong. And it was like an empathic overload.
Right.
And I was watching this video, reels, because that's what I do on social media. I watch reels, and which I need to
too, but they're all now cleaning reels, and they're really starting to agitate me because, I'm getting triggered by people pouring huge volumes of product on their floor and scrubbing it. It's starting to trigger me.
Oh my God.
So I had to stop.
So the cleaning reels, and they're putting all kinds of cleaning products which are unnecessary. Mm-hmm. Like I'm putting Fantastic and Clorox cleanup and this and that and that. And like, you only needed one. What's the problem with?
And I'm starting to look at this and saying, this person is going to have COPD in a year.
Exactly. Or like, you're about to mix some chemicals that should not be mixed.
And they pour them straight on the floor. I'm just like,
no.
Or you see people mop, Jacki, and there is so much freaking water on this floor that you're thinking to yourself, what is happening to the baseboards underneath all of this mess?
See, we got to stop that conversation. Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway.
We're going to go into a whole we're going to have anxiety.
Right. So I'm watching this reel of this woman, and she was doing one of those splits or reactions, or somebody was doing a reaction with her. And she was talking about how she thinks that some, not all, but some neurodivergent people are actually highly sensitive empaths and psychics who are not trained. They don't know. that's what's happening. And they're picking up on other people's emotions. They're picking up on energies of the room, of something that has happened or might happen in the room. It's unfiltered psychic energy, which is interesting because Patty and I were just having that conversation earlier in the day. Okay, hello NSA listening to us on our phones. And like this was just our conversation. I was like, that is fascinating. And this woman actually verbalized it perfectly from what Patty and I were talking about. So I was like, this is it. This is why I use my Van candle and spray frequently.
Yeah, that's what I want to talk to you about actually at this point is what can we do magically? I mean, clearly, okay, anxiety levels are at an epidemic now. There's tech stimulation, there's the constant alert and pings. Social media, actually, the algorithms are created to trigger you.
Mm-hmm.
There's post-2020, there's global destabilization, a mindset of scarcity. There is economic pressure. There is, I was reading something about gig economy burnout, which I don't even know what that is, but
I know what that is.
But it's a thing now.
Blew me away.
What?
A term that I just learned. Where did it go? We'll get back to it. But it was this whole surveillance. What do they call it? Surveillance capitalism.
Okay.
Well, that is where everything you're doing is being. This what you said is like we're being surveilled all the time.
Uh-huh.
That's the thing. It was like, hello, NSA listening on our phone. It's, all of our every click, scroll, ping, voice input is tracked and sold.
It knows what to put in front of us.
Yeah. So that surveillance capitalism. I was like, there's a term. So now I know. And gig economy burnout. So there is a digital detox I do.
Uh-huh.
And my friends, it involves you walking away from your digital, including TV. And now it might be, so for me, my digital detox actually involves some music. So I don't include that. I just let the music play.
That was a song by Saint Shannon, by the way. It went to number 16 on the Billboard charts in 1983.
What, digital detox?
No. Let the music play.
Were you making up when it went to the charts, or did you know that off the top of your head?
I know it off the top. I know Billboard well, so.
That's
it's
so
one
funny.
Of my things.
That's your savant moment.
Yeah.
But so your digital detox is really just some cleansing for yourself. You can use Van or spiritual cleansing, candles or spray. But I like candles because what you can do is you can like literally take the candle before you light it and run it through your aura to pick up this anxiety energy. It's like a buzzing.
Right.
And you just kind of pick it up or tell that energy like where to go into the candle, and then you light the candle. And then you use the stability candle or a grounding candle.
Right.
And you have that. And then you have a protection candle to then create a layer of protection around you. So you're pulling the energy out that's causing the vibration around you that's not natural. Then you're grounding your energy. So you're pulling up really nice earth energy, which is natural. So you're refilling it with natural energy. And then you're creating a protection shield around you. So that's my little digital detox.
Right. In my circumstance, Jackie, that's all I would do is use a sun candle. That's why we call this show Curse Breakers.
Yeah, exactly.
I'd use a sun candle because it deals with all of those particular issues. And a major figure in one of the biggest myths of anxiety, which is from a book which is called the Orestia. Apollo is one of the major figures, which is the sun god, and it is through him that you break curses. So, and anxiety is definitely right up there.
Yeah.
So yeah, getting and there's something with the sun candle and the citronella, I believe, in that candle, and it helps to cleanse. If you think about it, citrus has been used in cleansing since the beginning of time. So it helps to cleanse and purify and bring things into a natural state of wholeness.
Exactly. And if you think about citrus, it's round, it's colors of the sun. Well, an orange is kind of like the color of the sun, but it's very sun
is really orange. It's not yellow.
Well, yeah, whatever. But it's kind of there-ish. There's one more thing that I use. I actually use anxiety in my magic. They say don't do magic when you're full of anxious energy. And so one day when I'm sitting there going, okay, I need to do this thing. I need to move the needle forward on this thing, but I'm filled with anxiety. So I'm meditating for reals, not for reals, but for real. I'm
Because if
actually
you meditate
meditating.
for a real, you're going to get the cleansing, ladies.
Right. I'm actually doing an active meditation where I'm grounding and centering, knowing that I'm filled with anxiety, and I'm asking my divine allies to help me with this. And the message I got was use your anxiety. Use it. This is actually untapped energy. So this is something that you're about to transform and transition, and this is the energy that you need to use to do it. And so I used it. I pulled it up into my hands and I used it to charge the thing because I used it to transform. I transformed that energy into something
Right.
else and I used it. So when you're feeling really anxious, taking that time to tune in and saying, what is this anxiety about? Is it nervousness about the future? Okay. Get in the present moment. Is it untapped energy? Okay. Is it reading the room and you don't know what to do with it? Okay. But there's not a one size fits all. You could be in an energetic overload and you got to dump it back into the earth. So you could be an intuition hit and you got to go, there's a disturbance in the force.
Right.
Yeah. I've gotten anxious when there's a spirit in the room and I'm like, I'm freaking out. What's going on?
Me
And then
too.
when I tune
Usually
in,
it's called Jack Daniels.
not that spirit, but there was a different, it's a spirit that belonged to somebody else and they were too close to me. And so I got an anxiety hit because it wasn't my energy.
Right.
So it could be a lot of different things. So it's not one size fits all.
Exactly. And we are now done.
Yeah.
We're
Look
done.
at us.
I want to remind everybody, if you have not already done so, do so, is make sure that you, on the show note page, there will be a link to our calendar in which all of the astrology is delivered to your whatever apps that you're using or, whatever calendars that you happen to have. So you can stay up to date on all of the astrological trends and conditions and the cosmic weather forecast all of the time. So, you can go to anywhere in the show notes and find a link to that and make sure that you subscribe to it. This show, of course, is sponsored by Coventry Creations. If you have a problem in your life, regardless of what that problem is, we have a candle for that. So make sure that you go and get you plenty of spiritual tools to help you. And we mentioned several during the show, so you can find them all at Coventry. Also, Jacki, where can people find you?
You can find me on all the socials if you're back on social after you've done your digital detox under Coventry Creations or Coventry Candles. You can find me all of those places.
And you can find me at Storm Cestavani pretty much everywhere except Facebook. On Facebook, I'm facebook.com/astrogossip because I like to talk about astrology. And Jacki, what do they need to do before we come back? Whenever that's going to be.
What they need to do is like and follow our show.
Yes.
On wherever you're listening, whatever platform, including YouTube, subscribe to our show, like and follow. It helps other people find this show too. And so we really appreciate it. The more followers we have, the more people that can find us. And in the meantime, whatever you do, keep it magic.
Speak life, everybody. We'll see you soon.